We're live. Hey everyone, welcome to another Uxcel webinar. My name is Sofia. I'm the community manager here and your host for today's session. For those who are joining us for the first time, this webinar is a part of our free webinar series where every single month we bring you the absolute best design experts from around the globe to share their real world insights and strategies. And today we will be chatting about what modern content teams are doing, how they're evolving as companies adapt and introduce more AI into their workflows. There's a lot of anxiety around the topic. Will I get replaced? How can I use AI? And what can I do to prepare myself? So, in the next hour, you'll hear from our special guest, Oleksii, senior content designer at TravelPerk, about skills AI can't replace and how you can best develop them yourself and within your team. But before we dive in, quick housekeeping notes from my side. We love to make these sessions as interactive as possible. So, it's a two-way conversation. Let us know your name and tell us maybe what skills you think AI can't replace. And of course, as always, we've saved the last 15 minutes of the webinar for a live Q&A. So if you hear something during our talk, even before the Q&A, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we will do our best to get to it in the time dedicated for the Q&A. And yeah, without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, Oleksii. How are you doing?
Thank you. Glad to be here. I'm doing pretty great. It's not very sunny in London, but maybe we will bring some sunshine with the presentation and this lecture.
Oh, yes. Okay, so you've prepared you've prepared a presentation for us today, so I will just pop it on the screen and let you have it.
Thank you. Thanks for the intro. Hey everyone, and let's dive right into this. I'm Oleksii. I work at a company called TravelPerk, and I would like to chat today about the AI and what are the implications of AI being more and more popularly used in companies and the content design teams. But briefly, before we start, I think it's worth mentioning where I worked, what's my background, why am I even expert enough to talk to you about this, right? Does it make any sense? As I mentioned right now, I work at TravelPerk, which is a business travel company. We're covering pretty much everything from searching and booking flight tickets, cars, and everything for you. And now from recently, we're also going to be doing expense reports and stuff for you. So it's really a huge scope. And with that, what will help me with that right now is my previous experience in fintech, which I had when I worked in Stockholm in Sweden for a Swedish company called Klarna, which is a buy now, pay later company. And I think it's worth saying it's the bank. A pretty big one, many challenging UX problems because of fintech being highly regulated and so on. But I think it's really important to mention as well that another thing that I was doing for the last few years, besides my 9-to-5 job, was teaching at a company called Squad, which is a Ukrainian-based online platform where I had 3 groups of students, and which is total is like 90 students, and we learned everything from intro to UX writing to really advanced content design things. And this webinar is basically, as Sofia mentioned, as a result of me and other people being asked more and more about how much of a danger do we have hanging above our heads as content people. I think my last group asked this question the most because they were like closer to this whole AI adoption. How soon will we be gone, or like how many years do we have? That was the question I really remember, which was really depressive in my opinion. It's not that bad. Everything is okay. And I hope today's presentation will help you chill and understand that. Because more and more AI tools are introduced to companies' workflows in tech, and people start feeling like they might be laid off or substituted by it. But what is the overall situation right now in the tech world with AI? I think it's worse from my end, talking from my own experience. So I will touch briefly on what I have now in my company and what I had in previous company, Klarna. So at TravelPerk, basically we are using AI mostly as a tool that helps us being either more productive or focus on bigger things instead of doing some manual things. Like, for instance, as a travel company, we deal a lot with flight changes, timeline is broken for some sort of like ticket, and we get like thousands of tickets all the time, and as a result, customer service team had to go over this manually, and that's a good chance to automate this and to make sure the customer service can actually focus on building better experience for the travelers, besides these manual tasks, which kind of highlights this option of using AI more as a kind of as a solution for some problems, but also as a tool because we use it as designers, as engineers, as product managers in our day-to-day job. Klarna, my previous company, I think many of you might have seen in tech news that this like pretty famous quote was there. Klarna CEO saying that they want Klarna to be like the favorite guinea pig for Sam Altman's OpenAI, which basically is the approach where you're trying to use AI as a solution for as many internal things as possible, automating pretty much everything you can do and trying to strive towards more or less full automation of whatever you can do. And I'm not going to judge this. I think it's different companies have different goals and strategies, and it's fine. And different goals, different strategies, and some companies see it as a solution, and some companies see it as a tool. But I would actually say that, of course, naturally, I would say I would want to lean towards saying that AI as a tool is the most preferred way of working. It's better because it kind of makes sure that less people are actually directly affected by like being substituted by AI, or some of their work is substituted. But the reality is, to build good UX, you actually need to have the approach that combines the two of them. There is nothing good in extremes, right? So something in between is really the best thing. So sometimes you will need AI as a solution of some internal process, or like have a solution for the user. But using AI as a tool is also equally important to make sure that you focus on the right things when building UX, instead of, let's say, sitting down and rewriting the same copy over and over. But briefly, let's touch on what AI is already good at when we're talking about content, UX writing. Definitely bouncing ideas. I think even outside of my job, I might sometimes bounce ideas with ChatGPT about something in my life, which is kind of dangerous. Don't use it as a therapy, because I heard people doing this. Kind of weird, but genuinely like random things. And you can also draft copy, like initial drafts. I think I can remember so many articles from like 10 years ago talking about the writer's block, right? When you cannot just sit down and start writing. And I think it's a really good solution that you can get an initial draft based on some good, like well-prepared prompt for the project you're working on. And then you can go from there. I think it also includes grammar checks, punctuation, and like all this syntaxes related stuff. Some tools, like let's say, I think one of the examples would be Writer AI, allows you to actually fit in all your tonality rules, voice, the style guide, and general guidelines and principles that you use when you write for your brand, which will make sure that it will help you get the better like output content-wise. And it wouldn't really require the content designer or a UX writer or a copywriter actually working with this, because you will basically be the person training it. But I think training might not be the best word, more like helping it learn, write better, and give better output. And of course, localization is the hot topic for AI, because I think that's one of the most popular, like number one things people try to use AI for, which I think is also all right, as long as we are making sure that it's not just fully automated without all the QA and checks and stuff. But the most important note here is that all of this still requires the evaluation of the output you get. You will still need to make adjustments, like bouncing ideas with ChatGPT is fun, or like any other AI, but you will still need to choose from those ideas. You will still need to understand whether this AI's, like the model's judgment, actually fits your product, actually fits the users you're working with. Same goes for drafting copies. And of course, same goes for localization. You can have like the whole workflow process, including AI, to work on localization, but you will have to work on the constant QA sessions and making sure, for instance, that the projects that are very content heavy and very important for the company in terms of generating revenue, or like making sure the users don't have too many challenges going through the journey, you will still have to work on those more closely with actual translators and making sure what you ship is good enough. What it's not good at, it sounds dramatic, but it really isn't good at some things. For instance, solving complex UX problems. And I feel like that might be a point of discussion, because maybe some people will not agree. But here is my experience that I've like noticed over the last 2 or 3 years. AI is very much focused on giving you a perfect solution. It wants to please you. It wants to help you. It wants to make sure that, okay, you asked for the solution. There you go. I scanned everything I could. I took into account most of the things you advised taking into account, and I gave you the best solution you were hoping for, and I hope you're pleased enough. It will not challenge you and say, like, hey, but where are you getting it from? Or have you considered this? Do you have any kind of tech limitations that we need to remember about? It's also easily infected with the bias. And what I mean by that is, for instance, when the PM sits down with ChatGPT or any other model and tries to feed in the project and get some sort of output from it, most probably, let's be honest, a PM, a designer, I don't want to focus only on PMs, but let's say a PM for this instance, will still have their own assumptions. And these assumptions will be basically translated right into the AI's mouth, because everything that PM thinks is irrelevant, but PM just thinks this because maybe PM thinks that it doesn't look like a good solution. It will be fed into AI as a task, and AI will also see these things as irrelevant. That's why I created this meme, because I think it kind of shows well what happens, that ChatGPT operates, or other AI, in absolutes. It has to have a perfect solution. It doesn't want to test anything unless you actually ask it to constantly challenge you, which also I don't think will end well if you just ask it to challenge you all the time. It will literally do it all the time. So yeah, as I said, it's really operating in absolutes, which is really not something that creates or helps you create good UX. It's also not really good at cross-team alignment. And as much as we might not like plenty of meetings, workshops, and stuff like that, it's still really important not to just have AI model helping separate teams or separate leaders or separate stakeholders, like working in silos. And as a result, you will have very much the experience that is not aligned and is very different. And again, very much catered to support the person working with it and giving it whatever they want to hear. Of course, taking into account all the tech limitations and edge cases, it will definitely take it into account if you gather all of those and bring it to AI, but it will not listen to you about the task you have, a project, a problem, and will not ask you, okay, how was your backend working, and so on, to make sure that the system might operate differently, but AI will always think in it more like as a vacuum, as a good working, let's say it's a bank app. It means that all the payments work good. They will not ask you, oh, by the way, what if the payment is sent around 11 p.m. on Friday? Do you also send them or something like this? They will always look at the other bank solution they know about at this point and consider how they work and assume your company is ideal and also has great backend. Also, staying consistent with core UX principles. That's something I actually had a conversation recently with my former colleague and friend, and she mentioned that like it's definitely helpful and she works with it a lot, but she still needs to reiterate many times the best practices and UX principles to remind AI to stick to them and not make things up or stuff like that. And as mentioned before, of course, evaluating the output, it would be kind of weird if AI could evaluate itself and give you whether it's give you an answer, whether it's good output or bad. Of course, we need to be there to make those adjustments and make those evaluations. But how does this actually affect our job, all of this? I think that we all know as UX writers or content designers, I think if we have product designers or PMs as well, they might have heard this, how for the last, I don't know, 6, 7, maybe 8 years, content designers have been fighting for the getting a seat at the table, which I think is correct thing to do. But at the same time, I think it's kind of doing us more harm at this point than actually help, because people constantly complaining about not having a seat at the table. We all end up sometimes in a pretty toxic environment when we are demanding something, not clearly seeing that we need a more like a bit of a different approach, let's say, just that not working with current PM or current team, and you need to be a bit flexible from time to time. And yeah, so we all know this getting a seat at the table thing. And I think what we've all noticed is that once the AI are like procured by your company, any model you got, it will basically get that seat at the table really fast, because PMs and others will start trusting it and start trying to embed it in as many places as possible, which is kind of frustrating. But I feel like we need to focus on a positive thing. What's positive is, oh no, actually, before we go to the positives, I'm sorry, I forgot about this slide, but I wanted to talk about this really. There was a post that really blew up on LinkedIn. It doesn't matter who posted it, but I think if you're like a part of the content design community, you might know this. The famous Figma is Dead post. I think this post kind of shows everything that is wrong with the understanding of some people how our job, like how we work in our job and how designers work and how we work together. Because here you can see that Figma is dead. Why? Figma is dead because now I can go and create a great prompt saying I need a navy blue app design, and I will give a few more ideas about having a logo that has a rounded corner, and I'm going to get a great flow. And the key thing is here, the best designers are now prompt engineers, not pixel pushers. The problem is, big news, product designers never were pixel pushers. Maybe in some companies who have no idea how to operate like with designers in their team or how to trust people. And same goes for content designers. We are not word pushers or like wordsmiths or doing magic with content, how people really like to say it sometimes. And taking this into account, if you're working at a company that at least understands how the UX competence works, what will happen to you is your priorities will shift. And that's what I call positive, because they are shifting towards, in my opinion, to a more fun part of work, because it's more strategic. So for instance, let's say your company has a tool, Writer AI or any other, maybe in-house built model. It can support PMs and designers with their like ad hoc requests, really small projects, maybe like projects that don't really have such a high impact on the company's results, like OKRs or metrics or revenue. In the meanwhile, while they are doing this, just getting help with AI. Content design team focuses on actual end-to-end full support for the work that has high impact and actually contributes to company's success. So let's say if there is a project where you need a quick tooltip written for something, of course, I will always advocate that we need to align all of the tooltips. All of them should be written the same way. But if designer goes and get the copy from the tooltip, it's still better than, first of all, going to me and taking my time for this while I could be contributing to a bigger project. But also it's better than designer or PM trying to write something from the top of their head. It's just going to be better. Also, I think that's one of the key things, maybe in my opinion, in our job. And we often forget this. We are sort of connectors. We're connecting and aligning not only content inside the company, we're connecting the teams. And I think we can focus this way more on developing certain content patterns, like scalable solutions. For instance, you know that in your bank app, you have 4 different products. One is paying now, another is scheduling payments, and the third one is doing something else. And you will be able to develop like a content framework that will make sure that anyone who works with paying now will keep the same language and will be able to just reuse the content structures for that. So basically not writing something ad hoc, but creating framework that like helps you as a content team, but also helps designers and PMs. We also, of course, as mentioned before, reviewing outputs of the systems that our company procured or like implemented, designed, and we of course help it evolve. So for instance, if there's an AI model that your company uses and you continuously feed it with updated tone of voice rules or guidelines, you are helping it evolve and give back better content. It's now a part of your job, and I kind of think it's a fun part of the job. So to sum it up, really, it's less doing and more decision making. And don't get me wrong, doesn't mean we're doing anything, but just like thinking about decision right away on the spot, like, oh, I think we need to do it this way. Less doing, it means we are not sitting down and writing stuff constantly. We are more invested into reviewing data, talking to teams, and making UX related decisions instead of focusing only on content. So what skills are currently in demand based on what we've just seen? Of course, strategic thinking. It involves deep product knowledge, which I think something that I always recommend people when you join the new company. It doesn't. This advice doesn't really relate to AI topic, but I'm going to share it anyway. When you join the company as a content designer, I think the best thing to do is to do a quick audit of the like scope you will be working with. Let's say like you join a travel company and you're going to be working with the booking flows. Do an audit of this and try to understand how the flows work, talk to engineers, see what are the limitations, what are the tech related problems or pitfalls that are there. And understanding how the systems behind the product work help you come up with better solutions, not better copy, but better solutions that includes copy. And of course, I mentioned patterns before, but that's really important as designing for scale, meaning you develop documentation with principles of how you write. You have reusable approaches, so like documenting an approach, like a content system of some sort that can be reused within the company in different places, because that's our favorite alignment that we all love. We want to align everything content-wise. And if you develop a reusable system, it's the best way really to align it. Plus, if you use all of this to help AI learn a bit better, and that's also affecting the final content quality and the output. Of course, leading the projects. And I know it's a bit, I wouldn't say confusing, but that's maybe a question I also get sometimes from students, like, are we really expected to lead projects as let's say juniors or like not really senior people? I would say that it's not, of course, expected from you from the start, but overall the desire from you and the like you have to learn and try to lead the projects. And don't get me wrong, important note, I'm not telling you to step on someone's toes and like, okay, that's a design project, really heavily design oriented project where usually the product designer will handle design kickoff or like some facilitate the workshops, and you'll be just stepping in and being like, no, I'm going to lead the project. No, sometimes depending on your company, depending on the problem you're trying to solve, the project can be very content heavy, and the whole success of the project can rely on the how well you communicate some concept or some idea to the customer. In these situations, mostly it's expected from you to step in and lead the project from content side, not from design or engineering and so on. And it's really about taking ownership of decisions. So when the project is heavily relying on content, let's call it content first projects, it's important for you to make decisions, because honestly, very often you will even see in these situations like your PM kind of hesitating, and as like junior, maybe you'll be like hoping that it's going to be handled by them, but in reality you need to step in and take ownership of this, because if it's relying on content heavily, that's really on you. Facilitation and collaboration, that's I think the part of our job that we share with everyone, like product designers, PMs as well. That's something that is like a must for any tech job. I think sometimes, I think I read this book, I think it's called Why Design is Hard. It's a really nice book. And it's not very big. I think I read it like in one day, and it had this, I don't remember the direct quote, but it basically said that our job is not really sitting down and designing. Our job is mostly facilitating, talking to people, running different kind of meetings, and explaining to people either our decisions or why our solution is good or how we can approach things. And that's same goes for content design. I think with AI writing some stuff, we can focus on doing design kickoffs, or happen with this to product designer, writing workshops, alignment sessions like jam sessions, working with other designers or other people involved in the project. And really, as mentioned before, like connecting the dots between the teams, but also between the pieces of knowledge that are scattered around the company. Usually, really, no matter how good your company is at documenting, there's always some team that has their own stuff, and you constantly being in touch with engineers that you work with most, or like constantly being in touch with people involved in the project will help you gather this knowledge and avoid problems that I described when AI thinks that, okay, I've got everything I need for this project, here's the perfect output. And of course, keeping decision logs, like what kind of decisions you made on this project, why, and preparing documentation, because documentation helps your company avoid like having silos, having teams working in different directions, making sure that the whole experience for the user in the end is aligned, plus the needs of the business is aligned with the user and also aligned with people working on it. Data fluency is something I see all the time as a thing that is kind of expected from you, is analyzing and interpreting the patterns of behavior from the users based on either just raw data that we have from data analytics, or constantly looking at research that we've got previously, or what kind of research we can run and get the information from it for our content solution. And also, that's something that previously I mentioned AI kind of struggles with, is being ready that you need to test your solutions. You need to have not always only one perfect solution works. You need to come up with several, and you not even need, you very often do have several options. You have different assumptions and you need to test them. And that's where AI will not tell you, oh, here's a perfect solution, but also if you want to test, maybe a user is blah, 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 and test this. They're very, very, very sure about what they're doing. Yeah, that's basically how I feel talking to AI in these situations. But what does it look in practice? I'm a big fan of looking at examples when talking about something, because I think just sort of sharing structured knowledge or raw knowledge is not good enough. We need to see what breaks or works in reality. Let's imagine you're working for a banking app, and the banking app has two options. You can pay now, basically just send money right away. And another option is scheduling your payments for a specific date. I think all of us have this in our bank apps in all the countries, I think, by now. And the scheduling works very simple. User schedules a payment at some point, the payment is initiated at some point, and payment might fail because you might have low balance. So the product manager, and now let's imagine the product manager is fixing it just using AI, just going and trying to get perfect copy. And even, I'm not saying it's impossible, it is possible, asking AI to suggest what kind of touch points for the communication might be the best for the user. Yeah, AI can give you that answer. Let's see how it works. So product manager says, hey, our users tend to get overdraft fees after they schedule their payments. How can we preemptively fix that and improve this metric? Of course, I left it in the background, but basically, first of all, I ran it in reality to prepare this example and make sure like it really is the reality, right? I gave different kind of information related to limitations and kind of stuff, metrics we are looking for, and so on. And AI says, first of all, of course, you need to give users a heads up, explain to them when they schedule the payment at that perfect moment, that if they don't have enough money at the moment of the payment, it's going to fail, you're going to get fees. Of course, AI is like, do you want me to draft this? I said, yes. To avoid overdraft fees, make sure you have the required amount on the scheduled date. Nice, we have UI copy. It more or less follows the rules of keeping UI copy short, but not always. In this case, it's fine. So AI is like, I would advise adding this here at the very beginning of the journey when the user schedules the payment. Makes sense. But also AI is like, another option is adding the notification. Let's say if it's an app, it's a push notification that you receive 24 hours before it's charged, saying that, hey, you have upcoming payment scheduled in 24 hours. Just make sure you have enough money. So kind of sounds like we are really covered, right? The copy, we also have the copy explaining tomorrow this amount of money will be charged. To avoid the fees, make sure you have enough money. So PM does all that, works with engineers. We add the push notification, we add this preemptive flag banner explaining at the moment of scheduling that you need to have enough money. Product manager releases all this stuff, like the whole team, I don't want to say product manager releases. And as a result, nothing really changes. Like the metrics are still not looking good. And product manager is like, but we clearly tackled the UX issue. It might be something else. And in this case, content designer, but really it might be, I don't want to own this as a very exclusive thing for us, but just want to highlight for you that very often content designer is a person working with everyone involved, like with engineers, with PMs, with designers, talking to different stakeholders. We might have, we usually have authority to question things, and we might say, hey, but wait a second, we're trying to communicate something to user. What kind of use case are they actually like pursuing when scheduling payments? What are we trying to solve, right? Very popular thing in basic UX principles, like what kind of problem are you solving? And that's something that funny, AI will not really often challenge you about. Looking at researchers, and researchers are saying that the reason people schedule payments based on our interviews and observing the behavior is that they want to align the recurring payments they have with the date when they receive the salary, which is fair point. I do the same. Analysts say that, yeah, that's true, but at the same time, another thing is true, that we still see that most of the scheduled payments that are scheduled after the salary, they still fail. So whatever is happening, right? In reality, turns out additional investigation is ongoing, and we learned together with PM and engineers that the actual initiation of the payment does not happen on the scheduled date. Honestly, based on all my experience, not even at fintech companies, but overall, it is such a popular thing. Nothing on the back end works ideally ever anywhere. I think if you talk to, I don't know, someone from Apple, they will tell you the same, or Google. You always have some sort of little or big limitation. And in this case, made up case, by the way, 24 hours before the actual scheduled date, we are initiating the payment because we want to make it look fast for the user, and usually it would be taking longer. So we are doing this in the backend. We just didn't take it into account. AI never questioned this. AI never asked, like, what is happening in the backend? Do you have any limitations, and so on. Of course, the salary is paid somewhere in between. So in reality, the user scheduled everything for 25th, for instance, in Europe. The payment fails, and they have the overdraft fees, but because the salary arrived later. And that's the point where it's important to note that without this human collaboration, right, without building the whole context about the project, without working closely with people, running workshops, gathering all the information at the design kickoff from what we actually can do, based on the technology we use, let's say, our system. You're just like trying to treat symptoms with copy, and you're not solving the root problem that you have in your UX. And that's my favorite part, really, because I went to ChatGPT and I said, hey, but why this is what is happening in the backend, and you never challenged me about this. You never actually tried to investigate and ask me about this. Why? And ChatGPT just said that, oh yeah, my bad. I think all of us experienced this when ChatGPT gives you a really random thing, and then like, oh, my bad. It's just like, actually, I was in the wrong. And I really like how ChatGPT here highlights perfectly that, yes, it's really about asking the right questions. Ideally, I had to ask, like, what exactly causes these scheduled payments to fail? What kind of data you have? other time in mismatches between what users see and what actually happens in the backend. Also asking about technical constraints, which never happened. AI decided not to do this. So basically AI admits that, yeah, that's the perfect workflow, that's the correct UX workflow that I never followed. And yeah, that's I think a very telling thing that highlights that just feeding the information to the model is not enough, because in this specific case we see that PM had his own theories. He went in, or she, and fed the model with the assumptions, with whatever limitations were known at that point, without asking it to challenge or something. Of course, the PM got the result that ChatGPT deemed ideal in an ideal world. Also, I think important noting that AI will be always basing these answers on whatever they know, let's say, about the bank app. Because on a separate note, at my current company, I work on the project, and I cannot tell you details because it's not released yet. But the idea is that this is the type of thing that has never been tackled in travel industry, let's say. And coming to ChatGPT and asking to solve this, all you get in return is scanning all the known travel apps and travel websites, seeing if there is any resemblance in terminologies that you use. And they just, like, AI just comes back with the solution that is not even nearly what you were looking for, because it's not really ready to come up with a unique solution. It's basing on whatever language, whatever knowledge gathered from the world, let's say. Also, topic I wanted to cover today briefly is mentoring in an AI enhanced environment, which is basically, right now we talked through problems and like things related to working with AI as, I don't know, if you're a senior content designer or a product designer, but what do you do if you're hiring, if you're growing your team, and let's say you decided to hire a junior or a person who is not senior and doesn't have enough experience working with AI, or maybe you're genuinely interested. What if you go ahead and decide to mentor someone in content design? What would be great advice from your end? I think, based on all these things and based on my experience, first and foremost, it's really all tying up to UX, right? Because you need to coach people to think, not to write. You need to not focus on teaching people how to write. You need to explain to them how to ask the correct questions, how to frame problems, how to come up with decisions related to this, how to challenge things. And I think it's something, even before AI, I was trying to explain to my students that whoever, like, the school is based in Ukraine, so not everyone who came to learn was really ready to write in English right away. And I think the mistake was that some of them were expecting to have like a very big, deep introduction into writing overall. But I feel like our job, UX writing and content design, is so heavily tied to UX that I was always trying to give you this knowledge, this chance to understand, not chance, like, but understanding of how to challenge things, how to solve problems, not really how to sit down and write a perfect line. Also, really nice thing that I've done before was working on the problem with AI and your mentee or junior, and reviewing AI output together and sort of asking, what do you think is missing here? What assumptions are included here that doesn't make sense, or came from nowhere, or were wrong, or could be done better? And when we're talking about what could be done better, there is nothing better than going through real use cases from the company you work at. Especially if you're talking about hiring people into your team and then helping them learn. Just go through real projects where you can show that, yeah, the world is not perfect. We have so many tech limitations that affect our projects. Here's the project we worked on. We had this ideal solution in mind, but it was impossible to do in the first iteration because of this, and this. And this is how we tackled this problem. And these were our fails, and these were our lessons. Because hypothetical, yeah, it's helpful, but still not as helpful. Of course, help your mentee or junior understand how to lead conversations with PM and engineers. And I think that's sort of an art in itself, because PMs have different approach how they consume information or how they like to approach the problem. And engineers have a different one. For instance, like what I've noticed with engineers, which is really nice, and I love it because it helps you understand all the details about the backend system, is they're trying to cover all the edge cases. They're like, but what if this like user decides to to book a travel at exactly 4 a.m. and on the Christmas night when the time zone is changing or something like this, which is awesome because you learned a lot with them. But also like you need to be prepared for that, because engineers will challenge you with that and you might not be ready. Same goes with PMs as well. Also, I think you really need to encourage people to come up with to learn system thinking, and that's we are sort of like tying back to the content patterns, right? We need to understand to help them ask correct questions, but also understand that whatever is happening and what we need to say can be replicated in other parts of your company and scaled in a fast way. My final thoughts for this, because we are actually done. My final thoughts are that if we go back to the original name of the presentation of like today's webinar, right? The skills that AI cannot replace. I think it's genuinely all ties into understanding the core UX principles, learning and understanding how to continue challenging things and not just give in to this perfect world where there is this new solution that helps you with anything, let's say you don't like, or where you can feed whatever you have problem you have and expect a perfect solution from them. You will get the perfect solution, but the key skill of, let's say, having a group of designers having a jam session or like a co-design session and the workshop, looking at things from different angles, that's something you will not get from AI, and that's something you need to learn or continue working on. Yeah, thank you. I think it's time for Q&A now, and I'm actually, I think, right on time.
Yeah, right on time. Thank you. I'll let you take a breather here. So for everyone who is still live with us, we are now in the Q&A officially. If you haven't already, feel free to post your questions. I see some already, so I will pop them up on screen, Alexi, if you agree.
Sure.
But one thing I also wanted to ask before this is what I've noticed in your prompt when you did challenge ChatGPT in your case, it kind of asked all the questions you already told him kind of to ask you. Probably you gave him the solution and said, oh, why didn't you consider this, right?
Yeah, basically I came back and said, okay, but there was this tech limitation that we missed, but you never really asked whether we checked like how the system works. Basically, right here we come back to the topic of ChatGPT knows how, or any AI knows how bank apps work. And the bank apps in ideal world process payments properly on scheduled date. And ChatGPT is like, okay, makes sense. That's how your company works. That's how your app works. But in reality, very often at the actual meetings and planning, we need to take into account so many things related to actually how your company operates. Of course, you can, I guess, argue and say that let's gather all the data of all the backend system we operate and like fit it into AI. I think it is possible. I can't really imagine it happening anywhere, for now at least.
For now. Okay, thank you. So for the first question we have from Anna. Anna says, if you work in an organization that has an AI team, how would you leverage that in your work as a content designer? For example, asking them to create a chatbot for querying the style guide.
Okay, interesting question, because all the companies have such a different structure that I've never worked in a company that has a separate AI team, which is, I think, useful. Yeah, I think it can be a good start building a chatbot, but also why I mentioned that like it's a bit interesting to me that it is a separate team, because in my experience, building different kind of chatbots related to content design is also sort of expected sometimes from you as a content designer. So let's say leveraging ChatGPT to build a small chatbot that helps designers get quick, like a template, leverages a template for announcements of, I don't know, like changes, like maintenance of your system, or disruptions of your system. And any designer or engineer can go in and quickly say that the disruption is happening in this region, or right now, or tomorrow. Just write me the correct content for this. So I don't have experience with separate teams creating either chatbot or like AI solutions for a content design team. I think something I had experience with, and I think is very heavy but useful thing, is if your company is international, is working on a really big internal solution for localizing things, localizing your way. Like let's say building the whole like huge vocabulary and preferred translations for your features and stuff like that, and fitting it into this localization system and leveraging it. Yeah, I think I would go with something like this.
Cool. Thank you. And thank you, Anna, for the question. Next one is from Beba. This is a two-part, so I will bring both. I feel that other disciplines, such as PMs and designers, are not aware that we as content designers are the one connecting the dots. So I think it makes sense that we do it, but it's an ongoing task that takes time and energy. Any advice on how we can own this more officially so it's not invisible?
I love this question because it is true. Not everyone knows that it's a reality, and I think that sometimes from my experience, I think you might also see that within one company you have PMs, let's say designers, fully understanding your role and fully understanding that you connect these dots or doing something that you know you're doing. And for them, it is official. And for, let's say, one PM or one designer or someone from stakeholders, it's not that obvious. And like it kind of also is additional time and energy on our side to explain that, and not very often people are receptive of that. I think that my advice for this will be to to sort of give up this pressure of making it official, because I'm not a big fan of when people sort of try to quote the same book over and over, but I really recommend the book Why Design is Hard, because I think it addresses the key thing that is the same for content designers, for designers. It's just like a separate shell, but the essence is the same, that we work in tech companies with people with egos, and we have our ego, they have their ego. Everyone wants to contribute, everyone wants to own something officially. But once we're at the point where we're trying to officially own something, or like we see that people are kind of not receptive to this and we want to enforce this, that will not ever, I think, end well, and it's going to be a bit toxic. I think, unfortunately, that's where you have to, at your current place, sort of like exercise flexibility and do a little politics on this, unfortunately. And maybe at your next company, this thing is going to be more obvious, or you'll try to sort of build it from the inside, assembling sort of like one front with those designers, those PMs who understand that. Unfortunately, that's the only way, because I really don't like the, sometimes people give advice of like, just push it, like, and do this and make more meetings with stakeholders where you push this idea. I've seen some of my students doing that and ending up in a very toxic environment where people just feel too attacked, and they get tired of hearing it over and over. So it's a really thin line. And we just need to be aware of people like in their egos, and let's say designer or PM thinks they own it, or you want to own it, but you unfortunately will have to exercise flexibility on this.
Makes sense. Thank you. Another question we have from Maya. I think you love the skills in the mod part. Do you have some recommendations for learning about system thinking? We mentioned that.
Yeah, good one. I don't think I have anything in particular, but I feel like the good approach for you will be pairing with the designer in your company, especially if you have a chance to work closely with the designer who owns, or designers who own design system, because I think that's something I'm trying to introduce more and more in my work. and I think it's really convenient and useful, is to learn from design system team how they tackle the design patterns and sort of introduce content patterns that sort of fit similar patterns that design components fit. So basically learn the system thinking from them. Because honestly, anytime I work like in my current company, previous company, with people from design system team, their system thinking is like on a completely other level, because they have to oversee so many things and make sure that whatever component they bring into life works for everyone properly. And I think the best way for you to learn is to actually learn from them, because really, as I mentioned, it's not about content really in our job very often. It's about design thinking, about UX, and learning from designers is the best way. I think if you just go ahead and, let's say, read a book about it, it's going to be useful. I don't have a recommendation on the book, unfortunately, but I am really always, the reason why I don't have a recommendation, I always vote for like, you need to learn from people you work with and from actual people doing this.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, I'm not sure how much you are into hiring, but we got kind of a hiring question. So, do you, in your experience, or maybe you've heard from people, do hiring managers accept candidates using many AI tools in their design process, or do they still prefer traditional methods?
Oh, let me think about this. So, do hiring managers accept? I think having experience with AI tools, of course, is, I don't want to use a loud word like must, but it is a huge plus for you. I think having experience successfully working with it, and I think, let's say, even if you worked with this, but you don't want to mention it because you didn't really like it, I think it also kind of a marker of you not being very receptive of change, right? Or like being very open to this progress. I think many AI tools, not necessarily, but you just need to have something in your resume or like portfolio or showcasing that you did work with AI tools. Um, I I usually don't go for anything when we're talking about hiring. Let's say I know people like to add like 10 projects to their portfolio. In the end, I open their portfolio and I'm like very overwhelmed by this. I'm not sure which project you think is the best in your opinion, the best one you made. Same goes here. If I see many AI tools mentioned, I kind of start thinking that maybe you briefly worked with 2 of them and 8 of them you just heard about them, let's say. Yeah, kind
Yeah,
of not ideal. Yeah.
fair enough. And on the complete other side here, Zenaida asks, how do you ensure that your team doesn't over rely on AI generated content?
I think it basically goes from your initial conversation and sort of, I don't want to use maybe the word pact, but sort of like agreement with the team of which projects will get AI support, which projects will get actual end-to-end content design support. Because what you're mentioning, like over relying, it means that there are no rules and designers, let's say, are skipping going to you during design kickoffs and just go ahead and, let's say, project actually is very content heavy, but they generate everything. I think that means you have never actually talked through this and explained that for like we can generate using AI things that do not require, let's say, UX expertise that much. It's a very simple message explaining, I don't know, as I said, like let's say maintenance, upcoming maintenance time or disruptions with the system. But when it's a project, like a new feature or a new product, it's usually still has to have some like overseeing from the content designer. So I feel like if you have this agreement with the team, you will never have this over relying thing. Because if you have over relying, it means people are just mostly going to AI and skipping you. And that's kind of a good question why it's happening. Did you have any kind of conversation agreeing how you work with it? And for which cases AI is a good tool?
Very good. Thank you. Let me see if maybe I missed something. Oh, okay. Javier says skills AI can replace. Do you think we should add a yet to that? Keep it open just in case.
I will keep it positive and not add the yet. Maybe later I will regret this, but gotta think positively. I think also yet kind of implies that it might happen like next year or like the really nearest future, and I do not believe that. So yeah, I would not use yet.
Good.
But it's a fun one.
Yeah, it's a fun one. But I'm glad we took to to this side. Awesome. Well, that would be it for the questions. And yeah, that's it for the Q&A as well. Let me just drop this. So Oleksii, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you so much for the presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure that people have as well. I mean, I can see the comments here, so they have. But yeah, I wanted to also thank everyone who stayed with us until the very end. You will all receive a recording of the session so that you can rewatch it. And if you want to visit any of our past episodes, those are on our YouTube channel in the Lives tab. Also, follow Oleksii. I will drop his contact in the email, LinkedIn, not contact. Keeping some privacy there. But yeah, we're always, of course, interested in improving this session. So we will really appreciate if you have some feedback for Oleksii and us as well. You can take some time during the follow-up email. That's it for me. Stay tuned for upcoming webinars. We got some great sessions coming up. And thank you all. Thank you, Oleksii.
Thank you so much.
Anything you would like to say to everyone who joined us today before we go off?
Yeah. I wanna thank everyone. And honestly, like you mentioned about the LinkedIn link, feel free to I don't know, challenge me on whatever I said or ask questions about this as a follow-up as well. I'm very open about this. Thanks so much for attending today. Really excited to share this with you. And thank you, Sophia, for facilitating all of this.
Of course. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.